You're up a ship's creek. Where's the pilot? Where's the captain? Oh my, you don't want to be a ship up a creek. There's a reason why they use pilots, and there's a reason why captains are so important on ships. We're going to talk about that today. So let's define, what is a captain? Well, the captain of a ship is just that. He is or she is the director, the general manager. They are the leader of a ship. The ship could be anything from a little yacht with a 3-man crew to a giant super cruiser with 2,000 guests going down through the Panama Canal. What is the pilot? Well, a lot of the time when you go into harbors, when you go into narrow or restricted or, shall we say, legally defined spaces that require a more expert hand, a pilot is brought in. The pilot will usually lead like the ship into a harbor or lead a ship through a narrow canal, such as the Suez Canal, Panama Canal, into New York Harbor, into Boston Harbor, into, say, even Vancouver or Seattle Harbor. The thing is, the pilots are legally responsible for taking command of the ship. The captain is still in overall charge, but the pilot is there to guide the ship through. They know the local terrain, they know the local tides, they know the local weather. They are experienced in coming in and out of these areas quite often. And usually without a pilot, you can kind of get some serious trouble if you're not, shall we say, experienced going through some troubled waters. And so if you don't have a pilot and you're a captain who's inexperienced, you could have the potential for a real bad disaster. So think of it like this, those are what the roles are. What are the risks? Well, for captains, the risk could be anything and everything, from losing your cargo, bad seas and sinking your ship, being responsible for your passengers, everything from the loss of the vehicle or the loss of the vessel, to, say, doing activities on your vessel that could cause fires or risk injury to your crew and your passengers. You could be responsible as a captain for everything from being near another ship, going into a harbor, all sorts of things. So legally speaking, the definitions are the captain is responsible, he or she, for everything that goes on a ship, legally speaking. Pilots are only responsible the moment they land onto the ship deck, go into the wheelhouse, and formally, with a nod or with some kind of recognition, by verbal or by radio or by whatever means, the moment is pilot to whatever the control center is, I am now taking control, and the pilot then is responsible for guiding said ship in, through, or out of narrow and or treacherous areas. So that's the legal definition. So we know what their role is, and we know what their legal definition is, and what their legal responsibilities are. Recently, you've seen probably a lot of the memes about the 400-meter ship that ran aground in the Suez Canal. So from the perspective of the captain, what are they doing when they're going into a canal? Well, they're trying to figure out what are the tides like, what are the circumstances, how deep is the water that they're going through. They're worried about how close is the ship on either side to banks. Are they near other ships? Are they in any way, shape, or form while transiting, going too fast, too slow? There's all sorts of things. The pilot, on the other hand, they know the water that they're going into. They know what they're trying to do, what they're trying not to do. They know what the ship is on. They communicate with the captains. A ship that is going through at 400 meters, think of it like this. If you're a truck driver, you've got, say, 2 extra loads on your back. So you've got 2 trailers hitched up to your cab. So your average semi-truck is probably about maybe 18 feet, probably about 12 to 18 feet long with the trailer hitch. And then when you add on 2 trailers, you've got something that could be up to 90 feet in length. How long does it, say, take for that truck to stop? So if you're going at 50K an hour or, say, 35 miles per hour, well, you're going to have only so much distance before you can fully stop. So say if someone runs out in the road and they're half a block away, you've probably got enough time to slow down and come to a complete stop. But if someone, say a child, is all of a sudden running out and you are going at the legal speed limit and they're 10 feet away from you, you do not have time to stop. You're going to stop, but you know full well that that child, and we'll just stop right there. You get the idea. With respect to, say, a 400-meter ship, as the ship's pilot and the captain communicating with each other, what happens if you have got to stop? So if you're going at, say, 10 knots an hour, well, all of a sudden, It's going to take you possibly as much as a kilometer to a mile, which is 1.6 kilometers for those who are not in metric. When you've got a 400 meter long vessel, which is pretty much about the same size as the Empire State Building. Think of it like this. You are moving something the size of the Empire State Building that's 13 stories tall, that probably, when you include also how much of the ship is underwater, you could probably add at least, say, another story and a half. So you're looking at about 14, 15, 16 stories of movement going this way. So you got literally the Empire State Building on its side moving forward by something about the size of 16 stories tall, and you're going, say, at 10 knots. How long do you think it's going to take you to stop? It could take up to a kilometer to stop. So all of a sudden, if you need to stop a ship that's in motion, that's in such a narrow canal, as a ship captain and as a pilot, a lot of the time, you're not going to have the opportunity or the time to really stop. When the people were in that channel, just going back to the Suez Channel, all of a sudden they were being blown from one side to the other. Could they have stopped? Probably. But the problem is that by the time that they stopped, they would have had so much motion behind them. The only way that they could have probably ended up stopping safely is if they hadn't gone into this canal to begin with. So here are the constraints that you got to think about. As a pilot and as a captain, you're both in tandem, male, female, whatever. The pilot and the captain are communicating with each other, and they have to be aware of all the conditions going on all at the same time. They got to be aware of how much water is it underneath them. If they're in a canal, they've got to think about how fast they're going, how much distance between port to port, or say from bank to bank. If all of a sudden the conditions being what they were in the Suez Canal at the time, they were being blown this way, they were being blown that way, they were trying to carry out a maneuver to get themselves to slow down and kind of get control of the ship again. Unfortunately, there was also a visibility problem because the sandstorm was blowing. If you're out on the high seas, this isn't really much of a problem, because if you've got, as I said before, 16 stories tall going up and you're blowing into the wind, well, there's certain maneuvers, for instance, that you can take where you've got room to move. But when you're in a narrow canal where you only have so much room between either side, berth to berth or port to port or whatever, from bank to bank, when you have a canal that's 300 meters wide, a ship that's 400 meters wide, you can't go side to side without, and as you could see what happened, going to ground. That is the types of things that the pilot and the captain have to deal with. How do you mitigate it? Well, a lot of the time it's experience of the local pilots, it is the experience of the captains, it is the conditions on the ground. So if you all of a sudden know that it's going to be 40, say, knot or 40 kilometer winds, and you know that your ship's going to be being blown around, you might want to wait a little bit before you go through a canal. I'm just saying, the decisions of the pilot and the captain rest on their experience, on what the site conditions are, and generally speaking, what the clearance is and what they can safely do. In my humble estimation, if they were all of a sudden finding that the sand was blowing so much, that the wind was blowing them out of sync with everything, they should have probably started slowing down, found a place to weigh anchor, and weighed it out. And yes, this probably would have caused a bit of a log jam, but better for, say, like an hour wait than versus, say, having 6 days, 7 days, 8 days, however long it took to clear the ship. Pilots, they direct, they control the ship as it goes in or out of legally restricted space, confined waters such as straits or canals, and generally take command of a ship only for the purposes of guiding it to its final berth or getting it out of the harbor. The captain is somebody who is legally responsible for everything that goes on a ship and works with the pilot to get the ship to harbor, to port, and to berth and dock it. How do the mitigation go? Well, usually this is where you have the communication. The pilot is a form of mitigation, by the way. That should be stressed. It's not just the ship that's going into the port led by the captain. It is the pilot and the captain working together to get that ship safely in. I'm Darren. This is Danger by Degrees. As said, we're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We now have our own website. Come and visit. Share, subscribe. We're also on DTube. We're going to have our own blog soon. All of this is going to be available. share with us, join with us. Let's make these videos viral in a good way, not in a bad way like a certain virus we don't want to talk about. And I'll see you later.